Hiya, thank you for joining us. We're just going to carry on from where we left off. We had a slight technical hitch, but we are now back. Carry on, you were saying.
Yeah, so I was saying about my grandmother and the situation that my uncles and aunts and my mum grew up in. Really, the upshot of it was that they weren't able to establish a close relationship growing up, which meant that me and my cousins didn't have a relationship really at all growing up. And so I have two cousins, one's 25 and one's about 19, and there isn't really a closeness between us, which I think is really sad, because I do think that family is important in the sense that I suppose it's God given. In it's people who are there to be able to support you emotionally, physically, financially, and it's there for the taking, because when you have kids, when you procreate, your family unit is there for all those reasons. I think it's supposed to be. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's supposed to be there for all of those reasons. And so when it doesn't work out like that and you're kind of estranged, I think that's very sad, especially for me and my cousins who have nothing to do really with how it all began and we're the victims of it.
Yeah.
And we have had contact over the past couple of years, but it's been very strange because we're not going there. We're not talking about things. We're not talking about what's lays beneath. We're not going. We're just not going there, and it means that sometimes when there's not that level of honesty, it's really hard to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because I get the feeling that we need to go there, and we're not doing so.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a timing thing. Maybe sometimes people are at different places. They're younger. When I was their age, I wouldn't have been up for going there either.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes when you get older, especially when you have kids as well, you see that life is too short, and you're more prepared, I think, emotionally to go to different places than you would maybe normally. So I still think there's time for it, but it is just that thing of the potential being there for your family to be there for you and you them, and for you to have good positive experiences through family, and yet these things standing in the way sometimes. These are things that just fester and lay there dormant, and if they were out in the light, and were dealt with, that's it. Because I suppose even with you, what you said, you got what you needed to say off of your chest.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah. At that time, and those years that you spent not speaking to them, that's a time of healing sometimes as well. Because as we said, it's all about timing.
Yeah.
So, did that need to happen? Did you need to say the things that you said? If you hadn't of.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting question. Did I need to go there?
Yeah.
At that time, I needed to say something, and if I had been in the right frame of mind, then I would have been more diplomatic, about what I said, and as a result, because I was just like bleh, filled with anger, hurt and resentment, what I actually said was more like where did that come from? Why is she being like this? Who is she to, what does she, it's all that, it's like, where does that all come from?
Yeah.
What I learned over time is that my hatred for my family was down to the fact that whatever's happened before me has not been resolved.
Yeah.
Certain people didn't like certain people, so when I was growing up, I was hearing horrible things, that I believed to be true.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really in the early stages of getting to know my aunts and my family, and I know that what I was told when I was growing up was absolute tosh, and that my dad was really lazy because he could have actually taken me to see his whole family. I have a massive family on both my mum and my dad's side, and neither of them made the effort to keep in contact with their family members, So my cousin on my mum's side, Ione, she's kind of the one who first got in contact with me, and she was like, how are we doing, whatever. And I at first was like, why is she constantly trying to contact me, And then I realised, this must be what family's about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we would talk about our family, on my mum's side of the family, being weird. They're just weird. Nobody talks to anybody else.
Yeah.
Nobody's close. There's no interaction. And that was that. And then when I got to meet my family on my dad's side, you know, I could then understand why I was so different to my mum's side of the family. And that was a bit of a revelation. And the sad thing is that just before my cousin died, she was in hospital and we were talking to each other. She just found out that she had leukemia. You know, and I was like, come on now, you know, you can't afford to be sick. You're a mother, you know, what, you know, this is it. And she's like, oh, you know what, cuz, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, nobody's ever called me cuz before, you know. And then as we spoke to each other, it was like, we've got so much in common. And I thought to myself, I'm so going to look forward to just getting close to you and being your cousin. And then she died, you know. So I felt a lot of hurt at my parents, because I felt in a way, hold on, you lot have robbed me of my cousins. You've robbed me of extra relations that I could have had with my aunts and, you know, just people, you know.
Is that a thing though? I mean, because we know that, you know, whether we want to admit it or face it or what, we know that there is a legacy from slavery that that has impacted on our family lives today. And is that a theme with that we don't necessarily know how to keep it together? And due to the way that we have been displaced, we know that we will have very large families, you know, very, very large families, but that we don't necessarily keep it as close-knit as we can, because we don't know how. Like you said, you know, why was this person continually, because some people seem to know how to do it, and others don't. And when it's new to you, it's like, what's this about? Well, it's family, which is what I've learned as well. You know, it takes effort. You keep in touch with people and stuff like that. But when you don't know it, you don't know it. But is that something, you know, our family life was disrupted, you know, and it's like, have we regained that balance, and do we know how to do family?
Right. I think that from my point of view, being raised as a Jehovah's Witness was very divisive. My mother was the witness, my dad wasn't, right? And, you know, so then, you know, my dad wouldn't take me out to see family. Apparently his cousins would be like, it's Laura's birthday. When's Laura's birthday? Can we give you a, you know, Christmas presents to give to her and all that kind of stuff? And he'd be like, no, because she doesn't celebrate it. You know? So in that sense. But I was watching a video by Dr. Joy DeGruy, I think her name is, and she talks a lot about slavery and the effect that it has on us. Now, I grew up thinking to myself, nothing to do with me. Such a long time ago. You know, whatever happened back then had no impact on me. However, from watching her videos, I've realised that actually it's got a lot to do with how we are towards each other today. She is an American lady, you know, and I believe strongly that us Brits, Black Brits, whatever our title is, we'll discuss that another day, is, you know, yes, she's American, we're English, but we do have the same problems in the sense of, she said back then, you know, if something happens now, if somebody witnesses a person being knocked over by a car, there is counselling. You're offered counselling. You know, if somebody dies, you're offered grief counselling and all this kind of stuff. Where was the counselling for all those slaves, for their ancestors, for the people, for all the pain that they went through? Where was the counselling? So because there wasn't any handed down, or maybe they dealt with it in their communities, but it was to hide.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it was very traumatizing. And the effects, I mean, the displacement element has carried through to today. So when you look at my mum's family, for instance, she came over when she was very young to England. She had my mum here, as it turns out, and then went back to England, left my mum and came over where she began a new family with her husband, and had my mum's half brothers and sisters. But that's very common in the Jamaica West Indian community, where a lot of the first children were left in Jamaica while the parents came to try and make a life for themselves in England, and then they were sent for. And there was a lot of issues in that, because they came to siblings who were English, they had Jamaican accents, you know, so they were the other.
Yeah.
And so there was going to be a kind of a divide between them and their English siblings,
Yeah.
you know, and acceptance and so on. And I know for a lot of those first children, they have a lot of unresolved issues because of that, and sometimes it's not really addressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I know personally of a situation where that has happened, and the first set of children have just been ostracised,
Yeah.
you know, completely, and they have basically ended up just raising themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, that comes with its own problems, you know, and then oftentimes when the parent does die, it's more a case of, you know what, well, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to the funeral. I don't want to be a part of it. It's got nothing to do with me.
Absolutely. It's because of all those resentments, isn't it? And they're undealt with, and they're not. But as you pointed out, it's the trauma that comes from a legacy and the displacement. And it's how do we deal with it, and how do we kind of speak about it in ways that makes it become a topic that is okay for us to speak about freely. So I think that's the thing with black people. I think we went through a stage where we were talking about these things more openly, and then it became, again, kind of silent thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't help, and it doesn't help heal, you know. And if it becomes a topic for people in general, black people in general, then it filters into families.
Right.
And you can find it, you know, it comes into people's consciousnness. But, yeah, I think it is something that really does need addressing. As I said, especially that divide between the first children and because my mum was the child that was sent for from Jamaica. And I know she has discussed with me some of the issues that held for her.
Yeah.
And she has spoken to people of her age group who had the same thing. And as I said, just down to the simple thing of she went to a school where it was English children and she spoke with a Jamaican accent, and they you know, they made fun of her, and she was just plonked here in this cold country, you know, and she had no idea, you know, what was going on, you know, and there was no kind of Jamaica was over and done with. That was her past, and there was no speaking about Jamaica. She left the grandma who had raised her. And there was no speaking about the grandma who had raised her. The grandma died, and there was no going back, or that was it. It was like severed from her beginning, her roots, and where she'd been brought up, and that was it. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out of that, basically. And I think for the parents who left, you know, so like her parents who left England, there's that as well, because a lot of them didn't look back, and they had to, it was so harsh here, they had to get on with it. And they had to focus on the end game. And so they didn't get to kind of look back and feel still connected to Jamaica. For a lot of them, it was just about getting on in England.
Yeah. I agree with you there. My mum came to England when she was 5. And
That's quite young.
it was really young. And my dad was older when he came over. But she would cook West Indian food for him. And I grew up eating egg and chips, corned beef and rice, you know, and just sort of English-esque foods, you know. I didn't actually really know about West Indian food until I got older, a lot older, until I moved home, left home, and, you know, was now sort of having my own life. It's late. You know, it's late, and for a long time, for most of my life, I felt like I was an outsider looking in. I didn't feel like I was black enough. In fact, at school, I was often told, you ain't black enough. You ain't got the bum. You ain't got the mouth. You ain't got the, you know, lips, whatever. And I felt displaced. I felt like I didn't really belong anywhere. I can't speak patois. I've got no intention of speaking patois.
Neither.
But it's like, what is it? Actually, that is a good question. What is it to be black? What is it?
I think that's a very good question. I think that brings with it so much more, because I've had the same thing. It's like, you know, sometimes people can feel threatened. You know, if you speak a certain way, are you no longer black? Right. You know, if you act a certain way, you're no longer acting black. But then what is acting black? And so, you know, I've had that as well. And I think that again comes from our legacy, so that maybe we sometimes, because we're always having to kind of be black, as in our colour is always an issue, it's always seen, we find ourselves overthinking our blackness to the point where I mean, with white people, for instance, or English. Say, take English and white people, for instance. There'll be so many different types of English white people,
Right.
but they'll never necessarily say you're not acting white.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
you've done that. That's not white.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Because their colour and their race isn't constantly under scrutiny.
Yeah.
So they're not always associating everything they do and say and are with their whiteness, like we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And it's like, even though we're talking about this, and I so badly want to go there, and then I think to myself though, like in reverse, is the whole Jamaica thing. I don't fit in Jamaica, right? And then at the same time, you've got Jamaican people who feel that they need to bleach their skin in order to be accepted, in order to get a job.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
that's again because that's we're not, our colour is so there. It's so emphasised. It's not we exactly. We're just so used to concentrating on it that we don't know how not to.
Right.
I think, and so it's always in the forefront of our minds, even when sometimes it's not at the forefront of other people's. It's there in our conscious.
So being black is kind of like a stumbling block at times. Too many.
Yeah. It's just always there in our consciousness, basically. And I think with our family life, that's again because I suppose that's again the things that we've talked about. It's not necessarily confined to black family life either. Sometimes families are messed up. Yeah. Regardless. Of race, you just have the different reasons sometimes. You know, but again, sometimes it's the pigeonholing it into being a black thing that sometimes gets us right. You know, but I think that's a bigger issue because that does feed into what it is to be black and. Yeah, that's massive.
Right, okay. So there are going to be a lot more episodes of Shakespeare's Aura. There is a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we've kind of looked at families and how complex they can be, and how within our experiences how they differ, but then there's similarities.
Yeah, so do you think it's necessarily a black thing? I mean, there are complicated English.
That's what I think. I don't think it's a black thing in that sense, but I think that there's historical reasons why certain things. So we've got the slavery that can help explain certain parts of our family life. For instance, like I said about the displacement and the fact that they came over in the 50s and 60s. Because they had to for economic reasons, which dealt a blow to our family life. But then in with English people, you have the World Wars, which for their grandparents and parents was that was a factor within their family lives. Dads coming, granddad's coming back. Dads coming back from wars that changed them, that made them into different people, not necessarily family men, not very communicative or very harsh, for instance, and that affected their family lives. So there's the reasons behind the strangeness, but the strangeness is kind of universal sometimes, and the complexities.
Yeah. But it's funny that you bring up the Second World War, because a lot of, and maybe even the First, I don't know, but a lot of our black men...
Oh, yeah, I think they did fight in the First World War as well.
Right, yeah, and that would also have affected...
Absolutely.
Us and our families and our parents and our...
I think that's something to look into, because I don't know a lot about that, but it's definitely a point of interest.
Yeah. Well, since getting in touch with my aunt, she told me that her grandfather fought in the Second World War, and that England didn't have enough money to pay the black guys that fought in the war, so they were given land in Jamaica, in their home country.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were given. They were given, I suppose, back their land. In accordance with how much work they had done or whatever rank they had, managed to get. So there's
that's worth looking into. That's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. But It is quite a complex subject, and I think we're probably going to come back to it again.
Yeah, I think there's definitely scope for that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think most things that we talk about in connection with the black community does come down to family.
Absolutely. I think a lot within society comes back down to family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that if families were strong and stable and, you know, and loving, you know, the world would be a different place. But definitely with black people, it's definitely family. Yeah, the family thing needs looking at, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So you ready to wrap up, yeah?
Absolutely, and yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed it.
Okay, yeah, thanks for watching, and we will be back next week with another episode of Shakespeare's Aura. Take care. Bye. For now. Bye.